Masechta Menochos, Daf Chavav Amud Aleph. We're starting from the Mishnah, the fourth line, from the top of Chavav Amud Aleph. Sagt the Mishnah, Nit Meshara, of the Shiyareha, if the Shiraim of the Mincha became Tamei, or was burnt, or it was lost before burning the Kaimetz. So the Mishnah, Kemidas Rabbi, it follows the Shita of Rabbi Lezer by a Karb Mahima, that the Dam is sprayed even though there's no meat. Same thing by Mincha, which the Kaimetz, just like the Dam is mat in the basa, after the Zikah, so too the Kmitza, after burning it, the Shiraim becomes mutter. So just like by the Dam, which is mat in the basa, if there's no basa, you still could spray the Dam. So do the Kmitza, that's mat in the Shiraim. Even if there's no Shiraim, you could shade it, it's going to be kosher. And Rabbi Yeshua says by a Kam Behema, if there's no basa, there's no Dam. He learns it out from the pasuk that it says to tell you that if there's no basa, there's no dam, and therefore just like by the basa, if there's missing basa, you can't spray the dam. So too the mincha, the claimants which is matan shirayim. If there's no shirayim, there's no kmitza, and therefore it's psula, it's pasul. Amar Rav said who, and this is Rav Rabbi Yeshua, that shirayim. If there's no shiraim, the kemetz is pasul. Is only shenit mekol shira. Only if all the shiraim became tamei. Avor mixes shira lay. But if only a part of the shiraim got tamei, then no. Then the kemetz is going to be kosher. So from this, that the Mishnah chapped on only the case of tuma. The Gemara had thought nitmein only the case of tuma, that if part of it is not tamei, then you can do the kemetz. But of the sort of fly. But if it was lost or it was burned, no. In such a case, even if there's leftover from the shiraim that was lost, or is left over from the shiraim that was burned, I'm going to tell you that the kaimetz is not going to be is going to be possible. Only by tuma we're going to say it's kosher. In fact, Gemara Ma'ikasava, what is the Gemara thinking? If the Gemara is thinking that even a little bit of shiraim is considered a davar chashuv, to be machshir the kmitza, afilu avid, even if it was lost and burnt, if there's a little bit left over, that's a davar chashuv to be machshir the kmitza. And if you can hold that the shirayim is not a davar chashuv, so v'nitma my time. So why if it became impure and there was only a leftover a little bit, did you say the kmitza is going to be kosher? So you're going to say because the meratza tzitz, because the tzitz is meratza the shiraim, even though it's tamei, that little bit, even if it's tamei. So therefore, if there's a little bit on tamei, the kmitza is going to help. In fact, the Gemara yihachi kosher and nami. If so, if the tzitz is meratza the tuma, so even if all the shiraim is tamei, the kmitza should be kosher because the tzitz is meratza the achila of the shiraim, even when it's tamei. No, what's the pshat? Says really he holds that a little bit of shiraim is a davar chashuv in order to be machshir the kmitza, to be burnt on the mizbeach. But nitma, and this that he chapped on a case of tuma, who had in love with Vesarov. The same thing is applicable when it was lost, it was burnt, and a little bit was left over from what was lost. A little bit was left over from what was burned, the kmitza will help. Why did he chap on dafke nitma? He says because he chapped on the first case, which was tuma. In the Mishnah, the first case was nitma, and then came nisif or avdu. Okay. And the Gemara brings a right to Rabbi Yeshua. He doesn't possibly come in the case where there's a chelik of the shayim left over. The Italian Rabbi Yeshua ima kol azor shabatayda. Yeshua says all kabbanis in the Torah after the shechita, let's say the meat was lost, it became tamei, and there was only a leftover kizayis from the basar, which is achilas adam, or kizayis from the chila, which is achilas adam is bayach. Zedek sadam, that he could spray the blood and the cup is still kosher. But if there was only kachatzi zayis basar, kachatzi zayis chila, there was a half of zayis which is only good for achilas adam, and a half of zayis which is for the mizbeach. He cannot spray the blood because Achilas Adam and Achilas Zavach, the Chatzi Zayis of Achilas Adam, the Chatzi Zayis of the Achila of the Mizbeach, which has to be burnt, they don't get combined to Kazayis. Ube'ila says, but by a carbon oil where everything is burnt, Afilu Rak Kachatzi Zayis Basar, Kachatzi Zayis Chaylev. But by oil, even when it's a half a size basar and a half a size chaylev, Zedek Sadam, he can still spray the blood, because all of it is being burnt on the Mizbeach. And since all of it is being burnt on the Mizbeach, then you could combine the Chatzi Zayis of basar with the Chatzi Zayis of chaylev. But by a mincha, even if it's all there, you still cannot spray the blood. What kind of action are you talking about by mincha of zikas dam? There's no zikas dam by mincha. There's no dam by mincha. Our Papa said the minchas nesachim. He's talking about together with the carbon of a oila, shlam or chatas or hasham sham etc. One is obligated to bring with it the yayin, which is nesachim, and a mincha, which is ma'ur b'shaman. So that's the mincha we're talking about. I would have thought to say, hey, about this since that mincha is coming together with the carbon, I consider it as the carbon itself. And if there's leftover from the mincha, it's as if part of the carbon is left over. Therefore, the Mishnah is coming to tell you that even the Bryce is coming to tell you that even if the whole mincha is left over, it's still not part of the carbon, and the kmitza won't help. And the dam won't help to spray because there's a mincha left over, because that's not part of the carbon itself. But where do we know that even if chaylev was left over, you still spray the blood? So it's going, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yishmael, Umatu, Ba, and those that are native to bring Mishum Rabbi Yishub ben Chananya, in the name of Rabbi Yishub ben Chananya, Abakra, it says in the pasuk. That's the beginning of the pasuk. And now we're going to read the words of the Gemara. So from the shot of the pasuk is mashma, because of the chaylev, we spray the blood. That's what the pasuk is telling us. If the chaylev is still existing, even though there's no meat, you still could fulfill the zikas adam. We found a makal in chaylev. That if chaylev is left over, even without meat, you can still spray the blood. But what's if it was the diaphragm and the two kidneys benalan? How do we know that those are sufficient enough, if it exists, it's still remaining? You can still do the six adam. And the Gemara we learned in the Mishnah. We learned in the Brayso. By a mincha, we said even if the whole mincha is completely there, that was brought with the carbon, you still shouldn't spray because it's not a part of the carbon. Only the minchas nesachim that was left over, it's not going to be machshir to spray the blood. But but if the diaphragm or the two kidneys remained existing, then you could spray the blood. So that's the raya from the Mishnah that's the halacha. But B'Nolam, where's the muck in the Torah for this? Rabbi Yochanan today, Rabbi Yochanan dashens it in the name of Rabbi Yishmael. The pasuk said l'reich nechoyach, and we learn out kol shato ma'ila. Anything that you bring on the mizbeach l'reich nechoyach is enough to be masher the zrikas adam. Beitzel l'michtav, we needed to cite the word chaylev. And we also needed the pasuk of reich nechayach. If the Torah would have only written chaylev, I would have said chaylev. Only if there was chaylev left over, then you could do the six adam. But what's if it was only Yeseres hakaved ushtei haklayis? If it's only the diaphragm and the two kidneys, how do we know? I would say loy, that you cannot do the six adam. Because that's why the Torah wrote reich nechayach. That anything that goes up on the mizbeach has a reich nechayach is machshir the six adam. Because achmana reich nechayach. If the Torah would have only written reich nechayach, I would have said anything that goes up on the mizbeach is enough to be machshir the zika, filo mincha, even minchas nisachim. Because achmana comes the Torah writes chaylev to teach us only the carbon that's the carbon itself, which is daimel lechaylev. That if anything that's daimel lechaylev mentions the carbon itself, then it's Masha the Six Adam, but not if it's a Mincha. Sagt der Hilke Mishnah, a Mincha that was Shalei the Klishodes, that the Kmitza was not placed in the second Klishodes, Apostle is possible. Reb Shimon Masha, Reb Shimon says, you don't need a second Kli in where to place the Kmitza to make it holy. The first Keli, where they mixed, they poured the oil and poured the flour, and mixed the mincha, the sun with the flour, and then Yitzika, and then he did the kmitza from that keli. That's enough. You don't have to take the kmitza and put it in a second kli. That's what Reb Shimon said. It's kosher. Hikte kumza pamayim. If he took the kmitza and cut it in half, and he was mocked to each half separately, Shayda, it's going to be kosher. What's the reason that the Shimon is maksher even without a kli shodes, without a second kli? Amakra, it says by mincha kodesh kedash mi'i kachatas mincha. The Torah compares the mincha to the chatas and asham to teach us there are two ways in avodah mincha. If he wants, he can do the avodah with a yad, with his hand, like a chatas without placing it in a kli shodes. Then when he does a biyad, he has to do the avodah with his right hand, kachatas, just like the blood that's put on the mizbeach by chatas, you have to smear it on the corners. It has to be done with the right hand. If he comes to do the avodah with the kli, he can do it with his left hand. When he's using a kli, he can use his left hand. Since the kohen did the kmitz mekli shodes, maleu umakteu afilu b'em yonei, he can bring it up to be burnt, even in carrying the kmitz in his garden. But even in a kli of earthenware, he can bring the kmitz. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't require a kli shodes or a right hand. Side of Tanakama, side of Shimon, made the became shatorin kiddush. The Rav Yitzchak says that side of Tanakama and Rav Shimon hold that kmitz does need the sanctifying of a kli shodes. And the machlekes was after the first kli shodes. Now, after that, could he do the avodah of the kmitza without a kli shodes or not? The Tanakama says all the avodas of the kaimas still needs the kli shodes. Reb Shimon says no. The only to be mekadosh the kaimas, which was done in the first keli, and you don't need any more. Zok the Gemara Meisa, effective Gemara Akasha. Okay, so according to Shimon, you wouldn't have to, you could carry it with your right hand, and that's fine. Meisa. So the Gemara is Akasha according to Rabbi Yehuda, but they have here from the Braisa. The what? It says hekta chalavim, the burning of the fats, and the limbs, and the wood of the atzim harach that he brought up to the mizbeach. Bein miyad, bein mikli, bein you mean bein mismelk sheinin. That if he brought it whether with his hand or keli, whether with right or left hand, it's kosher. Now comes the safer part on which we're focused on, the kmitza and the aktorah. The aktoides, and the spices that he brought up to the mizbeach, even with the left hand, it's kosher. So you see that the kmitz can be even done with the left hand. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Chia said to Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Chia, because Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Chia explained Rabbi Shimon's shita that if he does a biyad, it has to be nafka b'yamin. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Chia let's done katani. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Chia says you have to learn the pshat and divide the words. That meaning when it says bein b'yamin, bein mismael, is not going on the bein biyad, bein mikli. It's only going on the kli. By the kli, it's bein mismal, and the biyad is nafka b'yamin, and the kli is bein mismal. That's what it started. That's how you have to divide the words. Toshma coming here, so it's not a kasha because when it comes taka to yad, it's nafka b'yamin. So the Gemara is going to ask on Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak. In fact, the Gemara Toshma coming here. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says that everybody's made by kaimets. You need kiddush kli shareis. It says kmatzei the kain did it shaloi mikli shareis. That he did it when he did the kmitza without a kli shareis. V'kichei shaloi mikli shareis, and it was a mekadosh without a kli shareis. V'heloi, and he brought it up. V'ikti the shaloi mikli shareis, and he burnt it. On the mizbeach without a kli shot is possible. Rabbi Kli. Rabbi Shimon say if he placed the kaimets in a kli, even if it wasn't a kli shadeis, the meaning Rashi says he's machshir the halah of the kaimets and the burning on the mizbeach without a kli shadeis. When it says b'matan kli, that it has to, he's come to tell you, it doesn't have to be B'kli even with Shalei B'kli. This Braisa is a stint of Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak, who holds that even according to Rabbi Shimon, the Kmitza needs sanctification of Kli Sharis. So Gemara say the Braisa like this: that means that Rabbi Shimon Masha, the Aveda, once the Kaimetz was placed in a Kli Sharis, in the second klishades, and now after placing it in the klishades, he takes it out. There's the heilacha. There's another hamshach of the haveda. The bringing it and the burning it. When he brings it to the mizbeach, he took it out of the klishades and he's bringing it without the klishades, and the burning he's doing it without using a kli to throw it on the fire. So there he says everybody's made it that the kaimetz has to be placed in a klishares, but the vaitedika part could be without a klishares. The hilach v'aktara could be without a klishares, but b'payim mamish it's not a stira because he holds that the kmitza does have to be placed in the second kli. Tashma, come in here and I'll iska kasher an additional kasher Rav Nachman Yitzchak, that Rav Nachman Yitzchak said that by kaimetz everybody holds that you need a klishares. Tashma, kaimetz talking klishares. Ketzad, how is the case talking about kaimetz klishares? He does the kmitza from the first kli. Umekache, and his mekadosh the kaimetz b'klishares in the second kli. He places the kmitza itself in the second kli. And he brings the kmitza and he burns it on his mouth with a klishares. Since he did the kmitza from the first klishades, he could bring it up and burn it without a klishades. So you see, according to Rabbi Shimon, you don't need the second kli to sanctify the kmitza. And according to Rabbi Yitzchak, he says no. For the kaimetz, you need a second kli. So you want to say the kavanah b'raisa is kimashek matzai v'kicha v'klishades since he did the kmitza. And he also put it into the second kli to sanctify it. Then he can bring it up and burn it without a kli shares. So according to the B of this Baraisa, it does fit for Rav Nachman Yitzchak. He didn't need the second kli to sanctify the kmitza. Only from the kmitza and on, meaning the hilacha and the aktara, can be done without the kli shares. That's what the Baraisa means. Tashma, another kasher Rav Nachman Yitzchak, who says that you need a second kli to sanctify it. If the kohen did a kmitza with his right hand, and he placed the kmitza onto the fire without a kli with his left hand, he didn't put it on the fire yet. He put it again. He sanctified the kmitza. He took the kmitza with his right hand and put it into the kli to make it sanctified. The nasan mismailei, and he placed it now he took it out of the kli and he placed the kmitza into his left hand. Yasli Yamina should place it back in his right hand. Mismailei v'chishallah. How about he in his left hand? While it was in his left hand, he had a machshavas pigol to burn it if there a lot of time. Or outside the hazara, it's going to be possible. he's not going to be chayiv kares, because to be chayiv kares, it has to be at a time when it was roi to be a carbon mincha, meaning a carbon. In order for it to become pigul and one should eat with it, he should be chayiv kares. It has to be in a place where it's roi. And the avodah b'smayil without a kli sharis is psula. It has to be and for Mashavas Pigul to be kasha. I mean that it should take place. It has to be in somebody who's right to do the avodah, but somebody who's using his left hand, that the avodah is not right to be done. So having Mashavas Pigul will not take in effect to be chayiv kares, because when he had the Mashavas Pigul, it was in a time when it wasn't royal avodah, it was in his left hand. So but if he had a Mashavas Psul or chutz l'mekayme while it was in his right hand. So if it was in his left hand, it's not going to be. If it was in his left hand and he had a Mashavas Pigul, chutz l'mekayme pasul, ein by chiyuv kares. V'im chishu Allah chutz l'zmanei pigul. Again, I made a mistake. If it was biyamina, I left out the word biyamina. Biyamina, if it was in his right hand, meaning after he took the kmitza from his left hand and he placed it in his right hand, chishu Allah, then he had Mashavas Psul. It's possible. If the psul was chutz l'mekayme, it's a psul, but there's no chiyuv kares, because that's not the real pigul. But chutz l'zman, it's called chutz l'mekayme. But if he had in mind, after he placed him in his left hand into the right hand for chutz l'zman, pigul chayav and Allah kares. It's pigul, and he's going to be chayav kares. Those are the words of Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon. Chameim kimishin l'sanai l'smailai. Once it was already placed in the left hand, shalatim mat nasei. So the Nesina placing it in the left hand already passled it, and there's no takana of being able to place it back in the right hand. What's the reason for this psul? So, meaning the Chacham, why the Chacham say it's possible? Mishum the bayi lekadusha, because you were supposed to sanctify the kaimets bekli with a kli shadas. Since he already placed it in his left hand, it's as if the kaimetz, the kaimetz is like the dam that was spilled directly from the neck of the behemoth to the floor. If it went into a kli and then it fell on the floor, then you can gather the dam because it was already sanctified. But here, the dam, when the kmitz is in the left hand, before placing in the kli shares, is like blood that fell already directly from the behemoth on the floor. Ba'asafe, and the kohen is now gathering that blood from the floor and he's placing in the kli shares. Possible in such a case, it's possible. Miklal, from this you can derive Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon that do not passel the kmitza that was placed in the left hand. Loibo matan kli. They don't require a second kli to sanctify the kmitza itself. And that's why Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon say it's kosher. To Yufta Rav Nachman, Zakasha Rav Nachman, who says that Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon requires a second kli to sanctify the kmitza. But here Rabbi Shimon says that even after he puts it in his left hand, before the kmitza, it's considered as it fell to the floor directly. And in such a case, you can't gather it unless it was first placed in a kli shares, the dam, and then it falls on the floor. Then you could gather it. Here, it's when it's in the left hand, it's like it fell on the floor before he placed it in a kli shares. And Rav Nachman says you require a second kli. So how could Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon hold its kasha? Obviously, Rabbi Shimon doesn't require that it should be placed in a second kli, and therefore it's not considered as if it fell on the ground. The yufta is a kasha. Rabbi Yehuda, who says that according to Rabbi Shimon, when the avodah was done with the hand, you have to do it with the right hand. Messiah is a right to the Brais. Meaning the Brais will say that according to Rabbi Shimon, if he did the kmitza b'yamina and he placed it he places it back in the right hand. Rabbi Yanai, who learns according to Rabbi Shimon, he says the Aveda of the Kmitza can be even done with the gartel. He doesn't even need a hand. He can use a gartel. I mean, how much more so? You can use a left hand. To have it to you, should we say it's a kasha from this Baraisa? Because the Baraisa says, according to Rabbi Shimon, you have to place the Kmitza back from the left to the right. Amalach Rabiani is a kasha Rabiani. Amalach Rabiani, I know how many I say Kitana the Hector, like the words of the Tana of the Braisa that we brought, the burning of the chalavim, the fats and the limbs, which is Marshad Avin Sakimitz with the left hand, even with the left hand. Well, it's nothing Kitani. He doesn't learn like we divided the words when it said the words Bein Beyad, Bein Bekli, and Bein Besmel, Bein Beyamine, Bein Besmele, wasn't dividing Bein Beyamin and Bein Besmele only on the Kli, and by the hand is Dafka Beyamine. No, he didn't learn Litznadim. He says you learn practically like it says the words of the Braisa, that Saya Kli, Saya hand, Saya right and left hands could be used. And you don't require a right hand even when you're using your hand. And therefore, Rabbi Yanai held that you don't need a right hand. If he divided the kmitz into two, only he can divide it into two, but he cannot divide it into 10 pieces and be marked each piece on itself. Even if he divided more than two chalakim, it's still going to be kosher. What's the chilik? Yesh kemetz pachas shnei kezayis, yesh hakar b'chutz b'kezayis. Rabbi Zayda says that the kmitza has to be the share is 2 zaysim, but you can divide it. It could be less than 2. The share of a kmitza is 2 zaysim, but you can divide it and have a kezayis for each. It has to be at least a kezayis. And the haktorah has to be a minimum of kezayis. That's going to be the chilik. You cannot have less than the share of 2 zaysim. And therefore, when the Mishnah said Pamayim is dafket twice, because in each Haktarah you can have a kezayis. You cannot have less than a zayis when it comes to burning. So therefore, you can only divide the 2 zaysim into 2, that it should be a zayis and a zayis for the Haktarah to have, that the burning can have a kezayis. So you can, when it comes to burning, you don't need the 2 zaysim. 1 zayis is enough. But the kmitza itself is 2 zaysim. He says no, the kmitza doesn't have to be 2 zaysim, and the haktorah could be even less than a zayis. So therefore, you can cut it up into many pieces, and the kmitza into many pieces, and burn on the mizbeach, because you don't require kezayis. Itma, we learned a machlik is in the base medrash koimets mehimasim mater shirayim b'achila. After the kmitza, from when does the shirayim become mutar b'achila? The moment that the fire catches on, even a little bit of the kmitza, you're already allowed to start eating the shirayim. Only if the fire caught on to the majority of the kmitza. I'll explain you the reason. Rabbi Yochanan says, because the pasuk says in Bereshis, when the gate is dying, it says the lashon haktorah just like by the lashon haktorah by the kmitza. What does it say? The haktorah by the burning of Zdaim. It says that the smoke came from the ground like the smoke of a furnace. The only time that you can have so much smoke is only if most of it is being burnt. So, and it's just like by Zdaim, the kita, the wood haktorah is most of it being burnt. So too, the lashon haktorah by kmitza, it's only after most of it being burnt. Your talmidim said in the name of Rav Amram. Tanya, we learned in the Braisa of the pasuk. It says he So from this pasuk we only learn those things that are the derech to be sacrificed by night. The limbs and the fat, that that you bring it up on the Mizbeach and you burn it after the sun goes down. Misaklin, and they decompose, they burn all night. But those things that it's the derech to sacrifice by day, you can get like the kmitza and the spices, and the keteiros and the minchas kayanim, or minchas kayanim shuach, and the minchas chavitin in the morning and the tamid in the afternoon, or minchas nesachim, shemayel maktiron. All those above mentioned that you bring up and you burn on the mizbeach by hashamish from after the sun goes down. What do you mean? Well, he just said it's a derech to sacrifice by day. What does it mean? Shemayel maktiron im by hashamish. It meaning a moments he could be marked it by a day is still considered moments right before the sun goes down. They decompose, and then they can burn throughout the night. But as long as it started from the day, even a couple of minutes before. Menayim, says the Gemara, how do we know that? The Pasuk come to teach us that anything that went up, which is the derech of the sacrifice by day, even if it was a little bit by day, it can decompose and burn throughout the night. In fact, the Gemara, you're saying you need that it should burn berube most of the kmitza, but if you leave allowed to do the kmitza moments before, it's not considered burning the kaimitz then, because it has to, in order to be considered as the kaimitz is being burnt, it has to be berube. You need more time before the sun going down, not just moments before. Like kasha, that's not a kasha. Kan likli. When we spoke about the moments before, it's kasha, the kmitza to put moments before the sun goes down, that's going to get the psulina. That it's not going to be a psul of lina. That's the shears, even a drop before, moments before, once the fire catches on, even a little bit, it's fine. Kan, but the Hirav, Rabbi Yechlan, that is lahatas hasharayim, to be mated the shine to eat, in such a case, it's not considered a haktar until most of it is burned. Most of the kmitza is burnt. Rabbi Elazar learns the words mibaya shemesh, meaning like this, that it means that's those things that are that is the death is sacrificed by day. Mukam la b'peikin. He establishes the brayso by the halakim of the carbon. It has to be by day, but what does it mean by night? What's the part by night? He says if there were parts of the carbon that fell off the fire, that fell off the mizbeach, that you can put it back throughout the night. That in such a case, if it fell off the mizbeach, then you can put it back. Even those things that are normally burnt by day, those things that fell off the mizbeach, you could put those parts of the cup that fell off the mizbeach, you could put it back by night. Did Rabbi Yanai say that? Rabbi Yanai said the keteiros shepak me'agam mizbeach, the keteiros that fell off the mizbeach hapnimah, afilu karat, even complete pieces shabbat that had fallen. You don't put it back on the mizbeach. B'devei in the base medrash of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, asher toichel ha'esh ha'ila al mizbeach. It means asher te'uka, when the mizbeach will consume the oil, completely burn on the mizbeach. Ikuli oila atamazah. Only those that were decomposed, those parts you can put it back. V'yatamazah ikuli keteiros. But it says, meaning only those limbs of the oil that was burned and decomposed, those you can put back on the mizbeach, but not the keteiros. Not, you cannot put back the decomposed parts of the keteiros. So that's so it's a stira. Rabbi Yanai himself said that the keteiros shapaka you don't put back on the mizbeach, and we just said that it's done by day. Says you want to something you can't, you have to remove from the b'naisa keteiros, because keteiros that falls off the mizbeach, you don't put it back on the mizbeach. When Rabbi Elazar was learning Masechet Menochos, he asked such a shaila. Kaimas that you put directly on the mizbeach, and then you put the wood over it, meaning putting the kmitza under the fire. What's the din? Is it the derech of burning it in such a way that the kmitza is under the fire or not? Teiku. A similar shaila. The limbs that the kohen put on the mizbeach v'sita aleinu satzei maracha. He put the maracha, the wood, over the limbs, and the limbs are mamish directly on the mizbeach. What's the din? Do we say Allah itzim? Amar Achmana? Is the kavanah b'dafka Allah itzim that the limbs have to be on the wood of the fire? Or since there's another passage that says Asher teichla ish es ha'ila ala mizbeach, which is mashma, that the oil is placed on the mizbeach mamish. It says ala mizbeach. Either you can place it on the mizbeach mamish, or you can place it on the maracha. Teiko. Similar shayla, but we have yitzah nafcha. Evaron shesida betzida maracha. He did it on the side. He placed the linens on the side of the wood, but not on top. What's the deal? According to Mandam, that says al means mamish on top of it. It's the ala eitzim ksiv. It says it has to be ala eitzim. So it's and this is on the side. Al, that the word al doesn't mean dafka on top. Besamach means close, side next to it. What's the din? Hachanami al, we should say besamach. That if he placed the limbs on the side of it, maybe I should say that should be good. Al, because it's next. Putting on the side is next to it. Perhaps Allah eitzim edumya the ala mizbeach. Allah eitzim has to be similar to the same al that says by the mizbeach. Ma'asam, just like by mizbeach. What is the kavanah of the pirush of the word al? Mamish means mamish on top. Afal kanami. So too, when it says al eitzim, maybe it means al mamish. It has to be mamish directly over the wood. Teiko tishbi atatz b'shul bayis.